The contract looks like a gift. On one side of the table sits 20th Century Fox, a studio that has already decided this space picture will not save it. On the other sits a 32-year-old filmmaker with a samurai western dressed up as science fiction, a title nobody at the lot can say with a straight face, and a request that sounds, to the men holding the money, like charity. He will take less cash. He wants the toys. In the middle of the 1970s, Fox executives treat movie merchandise as a junk drawer. Plastic rings, cheap lunchboxes, novelties that sit on drugstore racks and die after Christmas. Box office is the business. Tickets are the only number that matters. A director who offers to shrink his fee in exchange for sequel rights and merchandising is handing them a discount on a film they already expect to lose. They sign. Ink dries on paper in Los Angeles. The studio has contained its risk. The filmmaker has contained something else. George Lucas does not walk out with a bag of cash.
He accepts a lower upfront directing salary, $150,000, instead of the $500,000 that would have been ordinary for the job, and he keeps the back end, merchandising and sequels. Fox treats the clause as an easy win. Nobody in that room believes children will line up for plastic versions of a desert farmer and a walking carpet. A few years later, those rights are estimated at more than $20 billion in retail. The studio that thought it had purchased a cheap director has instead purchased a ticket window on a story it no longer owns. That is the contradiction. Not a conspiracy, a contract. A pricing decision so lopsided that Hollywood still lives inside it. How does a studio, staring at a script it considers a guaranteed flop, give away the one clause that will outlive every ticket stub? The answer begins on a lot that is running out of patience, with a movie nobody else wants to make, and with a man who has already learned what happens when you leave the future on someone else's desk.
By 1975, 20th Century Fox is not a temple of confidence. The studio still occupies the old lot against the glass of Century City, but the business underneath it has been living on event pictures and nervous accountants. The 1960s hangover never fully left. Oversized productions that promised prestige and delivered debt. The 1970s answer for Fox and its rivals is spectacle that can be sold in a single season. Disaster films, star vehicles, stories that end when the theater lights come up. Theatrical rental is the blood. Network television packages are a second lung. Video cassettes are a legal argument, not a plan. There is no streaming window. There is no licensed universe as a board would recognize one. A film is a date on a marquee, a heavy print in a truck, a weekend gross phoned in from exhibitors who still control the local monopoly of the darkroom. Merchandise exists. It is not respected. Walt Disney Productions is the exception everyone cites and almost nobody copies. Disney spent decades turning drawn characters into watches, bedspreads, and theme park tickets because those characters were designed as a consumer line from birth.
Live-action Hollywood treats licensing as a sideshow, administered by people who do not sit on the credit committee. A tie-in novel, a poster in a record store, a plastic mug that cracks in the dishwasher. Planet of the Apes, a Fox property, had sold masks and models without rewriting the studio's map of value. None of it moved the internal definition of the asset. The men who greenlight pictures do not walk toy fairs in New York with order sheets. They sit in screening rooms. They argue about running time, about bankable faces, about whether science fiction is children's business or expensive nonsense. Science fiction in that decade is a problem category. 2001: A Space Odyssey is art and a headache to imitate. Silent Running and Logan's Run do not rewrite the rules. Fox's own 8 pictures are already sliding from event to formula. When Lucas's Space Samurai script circulates under titles that shift, with droids, a farm boy, a princess, and a war in the stars, the reaction at other companies is a shrug that borders on allergy. Universal is not eager to follow him into hyperspace. United Artists is not eager. Disney is not in the business of incubating someone else's mythology.
The project lands at Fox not because the town is convinced. It lands because one executive is willing to bet a modest negative cost on a filmmaker who has just proven that young people will buy tickets if the movie feels like their own weather.
Even that bet is small by lot logic. The production is authorized in a range near $11 million, a number that would not embarrass a cautious adventure and is not the scale of a studio trying to crown a new king. Special effects will have to be invented in warehouses in Van Nuys because the old optical houses are not built for dogfights that look like gun camera film. The board's comfort, to the extent it has any, is containment. Keep the costs down. Keep the strange movie from becoming another monument to excess. Keep the director's quote from advertising how seriously the company is taking a joke about droids. Here is the blind spot later generations miss when they tell the story as fate. In 1970s studio contracts, the picture is the asset. Sequels are hypotheticals that belong to the company because the company paid to cut the negative. Merchandising is a paragraph for the lawyers, often treated as advertising support, not as a second studio with its own profit and loss. Standard licensing, when it happens, is short-term, low expectation, a percentage of wholesale on goods that may never appear. If a director asks for those paragraphs, the instinct in the room is not awe, it is relief. Give him the drawer that does not forecast. Protect the thing that hits this year's statement. Cash out the door before cameras roll. Retail buyers order what they can see. In 1976, they cannot see this. Concept paintings and a crawl of made-up names do not look like inventory. The lot proceeds as lots do. The script is a curiosity, the director is a cost line. The future is a sequel no one is required to believe in. Fox is selling tickets. It does not yet know that another industry is about to sell the rest of the week. Lucas is not playing a mystic. He is a man who has already been paid in the wrong currency. American Graffiti, released in 1973, was shot lean for well under $1 million and then escaped its category. Universal Pictures controlled the downstream. Lucas watched a youth culture hit generate sequels, soundtrack afterlife, and product he did not command. The lesson he carries into the Fox room is not ask for a fatter check. It is do not leave the afterlife on the studio shelf. He wants sequel rights because he already imagines chapters, a serial, a world that continues after the crawl. He wants merchandising because images travel into bedrooms and because he will need money that does not arrive with a stack of notes from a committee. He is a control obsessive in the practical sense. He will build his own effects shop because no vendor will do what the story requires. He will fight over a running time and an opening crawl. He will disappear into editing rooms until the people who finance the picture wonder if there is a picture. That temperament is why a smaller check feels rational. Cash now is a leash. Rights later are a private company. Alan Ladd Jr.
is the Fox executive who keeps the project breathing when the rest of the building would like it to starve. Ladd's motive is not plastic. It is taste and a bet on filmmakers. He liked what Lucas did with young faces and car radios. He is willing to be the protector inside a company that does not share his appetite for space nights. That protection has a price. Ladd can sell a contained budget upstairs. He cannot easily sell a contained budget plus a rich director quote, plus a filmmaker who wants to own tomorrow. Fox's business affairs lawyers are not fools in the cartoon sense. They are paid to reduce variance. Their hidden motive is career survival in a town that punishes the expensive miss more than it rewards the cheap hit. A director taking less money is a story they can tell aboard. A toy aisle is not. Lucas's representatives understand a piece of optionality the room undervalues. If the movie dies, the clauses are still worthless, so Fox loses nothing extra by giving them away. If the movie lives, Lucas has purchased a studio with a signature. That is not prophecy. It is a call option on a future the other side refuses to price. There is a life or death quality to the choice on Lucas's side that the studio never feels. He has put his name on a film the industry jokes about at lunch. He has strained his health on English sound stages and in Tunisian heat. Taking the thinner fee is another turn of the same screw. Starve the present to own the board. Fox feels a different kind of death. If this space picture becomes a monument to excess, the men who approved it need to show they did not also overpay the captain of the wreck. 2 fears, 1 signature. The ink favors the man who is more afraid of losing the future than of missing a paycheck.
The paper closes in that lopsided shape. Then the work begins, and the work almost kills the advantage. Lucas has the clauses. He does not have a factory. Through 1976 and into 1977, merchandising is a legal victory looking for a molding press. Major toy makers are not lining up to tool steel for characters from an unreleased Fox picture with no stars a buyer can explain to a regional chain. The film is late. The effects are a rolling crisis. Exhibitors are not begging. Licensees have seen science fiction movies open and vanish. Charles Lippincott, working publicity and the licensing frontier, has to sell a universe that does not yet exist on screens. Trailers confuse people. The title confuses people. A Marvel comic and a novelization start to seed names into the culture. Still, when the production needs a partner who will actually ship plastic, the established giants hesitate. A license on a maybe is inventory risk. Tooling costs real money. Retailers punish leftover science fiction after Christmas. Kenner Products in Cincinnati is not the first name a Hollywood lawyer would write on a napkin.
It is a smaller toy company, operating in the orbit of General Mills, known for inventive bets rather than owning every aisle. Bernard Loomis and the Kenner team take a license others treated as perfume. They bet they can turn stills and paintings into a line a child will refill. Then, time runs out. Star Wars opens on May 25th, 1977. Lines form on both coasts. Repeat business begins before the second weekend numbers are even honest. The country discovers a language of droids and sabers faster than any plant can cycle a mold. Christmas is coming, and Kenner cannot get a full assortment of figures onto shelves in time. The solution is almost comic, except that it works. They sell a promise. The early bird certificate package is cardboard, a few paper items, and a voucher that says the figures will arrive later. Parents buy an empty future. Children wait for the mail. When the figures finally land, the scale is wrong for the old heroic doll and right for a new kind of play. Small bodies, many characters, vehicles that demand a fleet. A land speeder, a falcon, a walker, each one a reason to buy the next blister card. Kenner has not merely put a face on plastic. It has designed, almost by accident, a collecting engine. It is winter, and then it is spring, and the racks do not restock fast enough. Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Chewbacca. Names a Fox reader once treated as a flaky draft become stock-keeping units. Retailers who ignored the license in April are on the phone in August. Toy Fair stops being a sideshow and becomes a second premiere. Buyers who live on margins suddenly speak in character counts. The 3 3/4-inch body becomes a grammar. Other companies copy the scale because the scale creates an ecosystem. Cheap enough to collect, small enough to need ships, numerous enough to empty a parent's wallet without a single luxurious doll. Kenner ships in volume that would have sounded like fiction in the screening room. Reporting from the period describes tens of millions of figures moving in the early boom years, with the line expanding into playsets and vehicles that cost more than the heroes who ride them. The toy is no longer a souvenir of a ticket. The ticket is becoming an advertisement for the toy. Lucas's still small company now has a revenue stream that does not ask a studio chairman for permission. Merchandising money does what a directing fee never could. It funds independence. The effects shop is no longer only a desperate workaround for one picture. Sound and editorial operations gather. When The Empire Strikes Back goes into production, Lucas is in a position to finance much of the sequel himself, using the rights Fox declined to value, and to keep Fox in a reduced role, distributor of a continuing story it does not own. That is the wound on the lot. Fox gets a miracle opening and a river of theatrical money from the first film. It also gets to watch the afterlife leave the building. Sequel terms become a negotiation with a man who no longer needs their development process. Royalties on plastic do not land on their side of the clause. Every saber in a suburban driveway is a reminder of a paragraph they considered worthless. The studio logo still hits the screen. The characters do not report to the same address. Barriers break in sequence. First, the audience barrier. A supposed children's space picture becomes a repeat viewing habit for adults. Then the retail barrier. Chains that feared leftover inventory now fear empty hooks. Then the financing barrier.
A filmmaker can raise the next chapter on merchandise and ownership instead of on a studio's patience. Then the power barrier. Fox can threaten, bargain, and distribute, but it cannot freeze the story because the story's legal spine sits elsewhere. The explosion is not tasteful. It is volume. Sheets, cards, masks, copies of copies, a retail weather system that later estimates place in the tens of billions over the long arc of the property. Kenner's success rewrites what a film license can be. Hollywood marketing departments, which once tossed licensing to junior staff, start treating the toy aisle as a second opening weekend. Competitors tool up. A generation of executives learns a new fear, that the real opening might happen in Cincinnati, not in Westwood. Lucas accepts a trade inside the victory. He becomes the bottleneck of a universe. He will self-finance pain, carry personal guarantees, and live inside sequels the way other men live inside offices. Fox accepts a different trade. It books a historic hit and loses the duration of the hit.
Years later, when the property changes corporate hands, Disney buys Lucasfilm in 2012 for $4.05 billion. That check does not go to the 1970s Fox board. By then, the climax is already old. The climax was the season a Midwestern toy company mailed empty boxes, and a studio in California learned that the real product had shipped without them. The racks keep emptying. The clause does not come back.
The case is a contract, not a sermon. Lucas was not a prophet handing down tablets. He was a filmmaker who priced control above a paycheck because he had already lost control once. Fox was not a cartoon of stupidity. It was a studio using the only map it had: fees, tickets, containment. What moved is the unit of value. After this deal, the sharpest people in the business start asking a different question before cameras roll. Not only what Friday Night will do, who owns Friday Night in year 10? The sequel stops being a hypothetical courtesy. The character becomes a long-duration asset. The director who understood that, almost by grievance, built a privately held company on a paragraph other men were eager to discard. The trade sits in the body as well as on the ledger. Lucas took years of strain, the risk of funding continuations himself, and the strange loneliness of being the person every licensee, sequel, and argument had to pass through. Fox took a windfall it could not extend, then spent decades as a witness to a world whose legal center of gravity had walked off the lot. Hollywood, watching both outcomes, shifted its attention from the ticket window toward the license. Campaigns, toys, and later home formats would be planned as one machine. The screening became a launch. The product lived in the house. Stand in a winter aisle. A sealed card hangs at a child's eyeline. On the old Fox lot, an executive can still recite the weekend gross. He cannot put that card back into his inventory. North of Los Angeles, a ranch screening room runs a reel for a man who accepted less cash so that this aisle would answer to him. Neither man is a villain in this scene. They priced different things. One priced a job. One priced a world after the credits. A cheaper fee can be the most expensive line on a term sheet. A worthless drawer can be the only drawer that still pays when the theater is dark. Studios still sign away what they cannot model. Filmmakers still take the thinner check for reasons that look irrational until the second decade. If the next unpriced clause is sitting in a room tonight, something a company is eager to concede because it cannot put a clean number on it, who is taking less money to keep it?